Nintendo stocks yesterday. And supposedly the Nintendo stocks in Japan went down 8%. And I talked about how I feel that even though it did go down, I think they'll eventually be okay. Nintendo has a lot of video games coming up. They got a lot of support for the consoles. Eventually, they will be announcing officially the Switch 2, which we're going to talk about a rumor with the potential Switch 2 reveal that is leaked online. There's been a few of these leaks, but they weren't the only company that took a stock hit yesterday. And I know there was some speculation that the stock took a hit because of gaming journalists. And I kind of went on a tangent. I also related it to a video that RGT85 made talking about gaming journalists and how they did a lot of the doom and gloom when it came to the Xbox business update, that a lot of them were pushing these narratives that Xbox was going the way of Sega and that it was pushing this kind of like uncertainty to where it inadvertently forced like Nintendo shareholders to, I guess, buy into the hype of the Switch 2 getting delayed to 2025, because that rumor popped up that the Switch 2 is getting delayed to 2025, and then all of a sudden the stock takes a hit. So it could be, and this is all just speculation, maybe the shareholders just quickly sold because of that delay and they didn't want it, I don't know. Investments and stuff is really weird. I really tried to do stocks at one point, and it's like the wind. You never know what things are going to take off. I'm still kicking my own ass because I was thinking about buying GameStop stock when the pandemic first hit, and it was like less than $5 each. I was like, man, what if I just spent like $2,000 worth of dollars on shares at GameStop, and then the whole thing went and got. I could have been rich now. But anyways, Nintendo's not the only stock that took a hit. I saw this article saying that Sony stock has lost $10 billion in value, and I saw somebody else touch on this. Smash JT touched on this on a video saying the video game industry is in trouble, and he had some interesting points and things like that. So I kind of wanted to touch on this topic. So their value is plummeting, and this is because they reevaluated their projections or what they wanted as far as like PlayStation sales goes, and additional financial data that they've pointed out. So essentially, when they first, when a fiscal year happens, companies come out, they put their projections or what goals they want to hit and things like that. And a lot of times the stocks live and die by that. And then if they change it, which Sony apparently did, it can affect a lot of stuff. So $10 billion, that's a lot, ladies and gentlemen, for a company like Sony. Now, let's be honest, PlayStation is not the only thing that Sony has its fingers in the pie in. Sony makes all sorts of products. They also have movies. They have music. So I'm sure they're going to be okay. If you really want to sit down and think about it, I'm sure they will be okay. But yeah, they lost that stock value. Shareholders are reevaluating the company's investment. They adjusted the PS5 sales forecast by a bit, and it basically caused all this. So you also got to think about the other day, they literally came out and said that the PlayStation 5 is in its latter years, the latter stage of its life cycle. So maybe shareholders are just freaking out for whatever reason. You're reading all this stuff. It seems like all the companies are kind of like not talking. Like my Xbox made us wait like a year. I mean, not a year. Xbox made us wait a week for its business update after all the rumors of them going multi-platform. Nintendo was radio silent about anything related to a Nintendo Direct until 2 days before it comes out. Sony has these rumors that their first-party releases are not going to be made, in a certain degree of like a release for like they're not going to release as many this next year. I was stumbling over my own thoughts. I'm sorry. I mean, you got to think about what's going on. If they lowered the forecast of sales, even though the PlayStation 5 is essentially selling 2-to-1 ratio against the Xbox Series X, they still did not meet the expectations that Sony wanted for the last quarter. That means PS5 sales are down now. What is it being attributed to? Is it because of lack of first-party titles? Is it because of chip shortage still. I don't think the chip shortage crisis is still going on. So that's interesting. Now, they did previously indicate that they were expected to ship 25 million, not 15 million, 25 million PS5 units during the 2023 fiscal year. And the winter quarter console sales have led the tech manufacturer to adjust that down to 21 million units. So they took 4 million off the bat of that. So Sony CFO Hiroki Totoki said that these lower than expected sales with the latter stage comment, asserting that the console would naturally begin to sell less until the release of the PS6. So I guess he's saying, hey, you know, now that the console's a little bit older, the hype is down, because this was hard to find for quite some time. I honestly think they shouldn't have ever said that latter stage thing, because that kind of like cannibalizes your sales. I know I touched in yesterday that if Nintendo was to announce a Switch 2 right now, that would basically kill all their Christmas sales if the Switch 2 is coming out Q1 2025. They wouldn't have anything to sell for Christmas. People would kind of just stop with the Nintendo Switch hype. And I think when this PS5's in its latter stages thing came out, people took that as, okay, you know what? We'll just wait for the PS6. And it really feels like the PS5 just came out yesterday, and it takes everything for me to sit back and be like, oh, that was November 2020. We're in February 2024. Where the hell is time going, ladies and gentlemen? Where's time flying by at to where it's already 4 years into the PlayStation 5 life cycle, and we're talking about the latter stages of it, and that the hype is dying down, and that the consoles naturally beginning to sell less because people are waiting for the PS6. Jesus. What happened to time? Anyways, Totoki also stated, again, I touched on this, that no major new first-party titles will launch for the console until at least March 2025. So that's a year. No major. So that's the key phrase right there, is major. So there will be developing first-party titles, but not major, I guess, releases like a God of War or, you know, whatever else is a actual, like, Sony exclusive, right? No Horizon, no, what's that racing game? I can't even think of it. Gran Turismo, you know, no major Sony titles. So maybe they're just gonna make new IPs, but that's concerning enough to where, of course, the stock is gonna take a hit. So when you start seeing like CNBC and other companies talk about this, like big, huge mainstream media, that's where things get interesting, when analysts start to get involved. You know, cutting the a sales projection was kind of interesting. On top of that, here's some stats. The operating margins, right, for the company's gaming division are actually playing a more significant role. According to CNBC, they calculated that Sony's operating margins during the December quarter clocked in at just under 6%, which was a drop of more than 3% from the same period in 2022, and just half of the operating margins during the highly profitable January to March quarter of 2022, and that they're describing Sony's operating margins at near decade lows. So near decade lows, yikes, right? Freaking yikes on that. And at the same time, the game sales are looking good, as the sales of its digital content and expansions, leading many to wonder what exactly is behind these surprisingly low margins, this article that I'm looking at says. So, I don't know. Pick a reason, right? We're not in the gaming industry. We don't know what happens in regards to business decisions with companies as big as Sony, Microsoft, and even Nintendo. Software development costs could actually be a huge factor of this when you think how much certain video games are costing to make at this time. There's some games that cost just as much of movies, if not more. It almost seems like these video games are becoming cinematic themselves. They're taking a lot of resources, a lot of assets. If you really want to sit back and think about everything from producing cutscenes, producing stories, producing like resources, making them bigger and bigger and bigger, software development, software development is definitely rising, and that could be a huge chunk of it, especially because um, there's no really way to like offset it, even though you know if hardware sales are decreasing but game software sales are increasing, there's no way to like check and balance or offset it, especially if the budgets for those games are costing more and more and more. There's not enough consoles to offset it, basically, is what I'm trying to say, compared to, when the PlayStation 5 was hot, like the 2020, 2021 era when you couldn't find it in stores at all. Now it's like they're burning through cash. So maybe that's why they decided no major first party titles until March. Maybe they want to cut costs a little bit. Smash JT did say that this shows that the video game industry is in trouble. I mean, that might sound like a little bit of sensationalism to an extent. That might be something that could be true. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be in trouble. I feel the video game industry is one of the biggest industries out there. I feel that they just need to maybe take a step back, because things have been getting outrageous for sure. Maybe go back to simpler times with how some of the games are made. If you look at what Ubisoft's done in the last couple of years, the last Assassin's Creed, Mirage, was actually dumbed down and made a little bit more of a smaller type of game compared to like something like Valhalla, which probably took so much more money to make. So, okay, sure, it's a near decade low, but how much lower is it than what it was, within the last decade? Yeah, like Nintendo, you think they lost 8%, it dropped down. Yeah, that sounds on paper big, but when you really look at the bigger picture as far as like marketing, branding, IPs, what else Sony has, there's no way that I would say that Sony, let alone the video game industry, is in that big of trouble. They're going to adjust. They're going to make adjustments so they could last. Because if you think about it, the PS5 has still been incredibly successful. It has been incredibly successful. It's maintained that 2-to-1 ratio over Xbox. And they are going to be getting more exclusives this year. On top of that, they're getting Microsoft IPs sent their way, even though Xbox is going to be technically making more PlayStation 5 games than Sony this next year. I think scaling back is just a business operation thing. That's what all companies do, whether you're in the food industry, whether you're in the movie industry, whether you're in gaming. All major corporations eventually have to scale back and look at their losses, their profits, their margins, their projections, and yeah, in the short term, stock might take a hit, company value might take a hit, but I don't see Sony not being able to restabilize and continue forward within the next year or anything. They got plans. There's a reason why they have the employees that they do. They're not incompetent. So I think the Sony losing its $10 billion value in stock will be okay. They're going to be okay. They're not going the way of Bud Light. Yeah, sure, the value stopped due to lower sales of PS5 and weak operating margins, but it's only investor concern, which is temporary. They always find ways to bring it back up. We got a new fiscal year coming soon. There's going to be all sorts of different plans. Yeah, the sales expectations went down, but that just happens naturally because it is the latter year. So interesting topic to really sit down and think about.